I can't give the name of the project away just yet. If I give it away right now, or I really describe exactly what it is that I'm doing, no, I'm just not doing it. It's probably gonna be one of those things like might be the easiest thing in the entire world. It might be the most complicated, but it's definitely never been done. Everybody's gonna really follow along the actual what we're doing here. So this is all about the fabrication of it, right? The strange concepts, the weird stuff that I can do and what we can get away with, and it's gonna be really fun. Definitely gonna be fun. So if you just lift really good, I'll just slide it out. Get a jack, get a jack. Oh, it's not heavy. There we go. The whole goal for the day is to get the 4 links all set up on the rear. So I already have the brackets and everything. I put those on earlier. They're already set and ready to go. So we got to get the axle inside of there, completely centered up, get the 4 links in place, so that way we have our motion and we have everything else like that. We got to get the axle prepped by cutting all of the perches off of it and all of the existing metal, and then brighten it, so that way we have a nice clean surface to weld on. So this should be relatively easy to get done, not too time consuming, but that's pretty much all there is to it. Dee, where'd you go? Here. This, you could probably just hit it with the stone wheel first. Use both hands. I've known Birch for 10 years or so. I met him originally and we served together in the US Navy. And he ended up coming to my base one day with his brand new diesel big rig little boy truck with a, I don't know what the hell it was. He just, you know, rolls up and was like, hey, can you build an intake? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, I sure can, but I couldn't. He wasn't really happy about that, but at the same time, he still stuck around and we just kind of hit it off from there. Getting the bars cut. We're using 1 1/4" 120 wall DOM tube. It's pretty standard for most 4 links. It's you know, pretty common off the shelf, about the normal size that you would normally find. Now, getting those cut to length, I used the CAD design that I had to tell me how long each tube needed to be from point A to point B. Then we subtract that out, you know, the sections of the actual bar end, or at least the bushing end, and the heim joint had to come off of it. It was roughly 3.5 inches that needed to come off the total length of it. I got the right size. We need a groove for the weld to sit in there to hold everything together. And then we have the plug weld, sometimes called a rosette, and that will help keep everything in there as well as what's on here, because a lot of people worry that this is going to split, and if you don't have a good weld, it will, but with that rosette weld, it's kind of like an extra safety in there, so just need enough on there just to put a little plug on there and it's good to go. So the total length that I have to have here from where I measured on the drawing is 29.5 inches from the eye to, or the center of the bolt, up to the bushing housing. So these I cut long intentionally so you always have enough material to remove, and you can always remeasure once you have all of the ends set. So let's just assume for a moment that I screwed up the location on one of these holes right here. This has to, you know, you'd have to cut that off and then redo the end of it. So just in case that happens, always cut your links a little bit longer, then measure out where they need to be and how long they need to be after that. Now from the center of here to about 29.5 inches there, this would be the location of the notch that we need to put in to make that sucker fit on there. Easy day. This hole saw matches the diameter of the bung end that we got to weld on, or the bushing end on it. So as long as we line it up right to that mark, it'll cut perfectly straight every time, and this will be ready to go on after we prep it, of course. So we got got a pretty large bevel or a land on there, so when we actually go to weld it, we can have plenty of filler metal in there. And this bevel on there actually increases the surface area of the tube, thus strengthening the joint itself. So hopefully I should be able to get this all in one pass. I don't have enough space on there to do 2 passes, so it's all gonna have to be really heavy on the first round. I gotta make it look like I know what I'm doing for social media. Instagram worthy. Every time I write like hot, happy, smirky, whatever the case is, I write anything like that, here comes a little emoji that shows up. But right now I say zapped and I'm like, I need a lightning bolt. It's not there. I'm gonna waste more time trying to find freaking lightning bolt. What category would that be under? Search. Oh, shut up. I didn't even know that was there. I'm gonna make sure it's what the audience will see what I see at the same time. You get these arc shots. And it's still a crapshoot, so sometimes you'll get it, sometimes you won't. Really hope that one was in focus. Oh, that's gonna look so clean. It's a good welding day when you get the arc shot. I try to think if anybody's ever gonna crawl underneath one of my chassis and look at the welds because they saw it on YouTube, it better look like it did, like it was on YouTube. Immense amount of pressure. So there wasn't enough room to do 2 passes on this, so we're gonna do just a single pass on this this whole thing. Welded it really heavy. I turned it up to 150 amps and just really pounded that filler in there, nice and neat and even like. But we don't have enough space for a second pass on that, so that's where we just trust in our welding skills and hope to hell that everything sticks the way it's supposed to. So I'm using 2 different types. That's one of them. So I'm using 2 different sizes of filler on this one. The 045 is the smaller diameter, and normally you wouldn't do that for, let's say, 150 amps or doing some of this heavier wall stuff, but the reason that I use the smaller wire is that I can actually watch it flow down into the root, and you can always add more wire from a smaller diameter than you can from a larger one. So you can't add less with a larger diameter, and since you want to see it wash down in there and you want to fill it up, use the smaller diameter wire to push in there, and you can really stack it up as long as you got your amperage under control. When I switch to the plug or the rosette weld, I use the larger diameter, which is the 1/16. Now there's not a ton of wall on these bungs here, on these rod ends. So we have to not saturate it in heat, otherwise the threads could get damaged. So the thicker wall fills it up quicker and also quenches as we weld. So that doesn't destroy all the threads and everything on the inside. So it gets in and out a lot faster, and it makes sure that we get this thing filled up and not distort it or warp it or mess it up. So everything, all of my major joints with all the bevels is all 045 because we can really push it in there, but the smaller stuff like the plug weld, we use the 1/16 so we can fill it up fast and not overheat it. So that's, how long did I make that post? About 50 minutes. Just shy of an hour to weld all of this out. Not bad. And after they cool off, we're about ready to install as soon as he's done grinding all of that stuff out, which we could be here for another couple hours. I think I should probably go help him. Yep. Maybe. Yeah, just like that. I'll just stick the links on and call it good. Yeah, we'll drive down the road like this. It'll be fun. Should be a rubber mallet in the toolbox. Why can't it ever be easy? Alright, so find me something that'll smash this. I don't want to break my welds if I hit it too hard, you know? We're pretty low budget here. See, that works out a lot better. We want to get these as close as possible, otherwise it's going to knock off a lot of other angles, but you know, a fraction of an inch here and there, you know, can all be corrected in alignment later on down the road. But for right now, they got to be pretty much as close to dead on as possible. A little bit better than just using your eyeballs, you know, get a couple of reference points and you should be okay, or at least really close. Just for reference, about 1 inch, being off by about an inch is about 16 degrees, and that's enough to really throw you sideways or driving diagonal down the road. You might as well have a car with wheels that point the opposite direction and just drive down sideways and be like, So these little guys right here are called high misalignment spacers. And what they do is normally your Heim joint won't allow you to flex too much. You only get a certain amount of degrees. Now, we don't anticipate running this much flex in our system. We don't need it at all, but it also gives you a little bit more space to work with. So instead of it going to about right here, we can go all the way up here, we can go here. These also restrict the size of the hole, or they reduce the size of the hole. So this is a 5/8 Heim with a 1/2 inch hole. So you got to take that in consideration, but I'd like the extra width on here and the ability to have some flex. That's kind of what we need, because the other side is just solid polyurethane. Not too flexible. Let's just get the backs in and then we'll worry about getting the axle set up and all that crud. Go there.
You want left on top?
Yeah. I'm going to cheat a little bit here, and I'm going to use the straps to keep the axle pushed forward, keeping the links nice and tight. And then we still have enough to where we can shimmy it around, make sure that our center left to right measurement is good. And like I mentioned before, if it's, you know, if the axle's too far forward or rearward right now, we can change all that stuff later. As long as we get everything set exactly where it needs to be now, then we can start tweaking everything else around later. No big deal. This is just get it in there at the moment. Okay, pinion angle. Probably your #1 most important measurement that you need to be very, very serious about too. So that is the angle of this face, your pinion or your input. So it needs to match the exact same angle as the transmission tail shaft or your output shaft of the transmission. Now, that's when it's bolted in. So with the engine, transmission, all that is bolted in. As it sits right now, that's the measurement that we need to make sure that it actually matches, and they're parallel. So even if on a different plane like this, they're still at the exact same angle. So whatever direction that is, they stay that way. So there's a lot of people who say, you know, you gotta have X amount of degrees on your pinion, all the rest of that stuff. This is a completely parallel, equal length 4-link, and it has the exact same travel as it did from stock. So that means it must match, because that number is not going to change at all. Small angle finder, I'm gonna put it on the tail shaft there. That measures 87.4. Now we throw it over here. This needs to go to 87.4. Right now it is 89.5. 87.1. We're close. We're gonna need to shim a little bit. I have an idea. That might be worth 3/10 of a degree. Oh, wrong way. 87.2, 87.4, don't move. Once we have those set, then we just weld everything in after confirming all of our measurements again. I want to make damn sure this axle is where it needs to be. Look, 4 1/4, so we're good. What's that angle say? Should say 87.4.
87.5.
1/10 of a degree is okay.
Welding 4 links is really not that difficult, but a lot of people will tend to kind of screw up or rush the job and not check their dimensions and not run their geometry correctly. Because if you do, then you're kind of just going to turn your whole vehicle into like a floppy fish driving down the road. So it's really important that you actually pay attention to your math and do your geometry correctly and do not rush. Welding is the fastest part. The longest thing is getting it all set right.
Piece of cake.
You know, I think the best part though is once you actually finish it off and then I got to pick up the truck frame and just watch that axle start moving.
Yeah.
It's like that's your gratification. It's like, I just did that. It works!
Remember the slide? Put those little shoes on and that little Teflon mat, you just slide back and forth. You don't remember that? You're too young for that.
So with the 4 links on the chassis, we have one big problem with it, and that's that it moves side to side, which means we have to build something that holds it still.
Probably. It was a workout thing.
And that's going to be the Watts link.